I remember the color of the nursery walls more vividly than my own hospital room. They were a pale yellow, the kind that tries too hard to be cheerful. The windows overlooked the garden I once helped plant with Mom. The same garden I hadn't been able to walk through in months without someone watching me like I'd collapse. My sister's name, Kara, was spelled in soft wooden letters above the crib. Not the baby's name, hers, because it was all hers, really. The room, the house, the future. Everyone suddenly orbited around like gravity had shifted without warning. Mine was supposed to be a corner room, too. It had big windows and good light. But it became her nursery 2 weeks after the bank transfer went through. 2 weeks after I naively wired what was left of my emergency fund, the one friends and coworkers had donated to when they heard the word Stage 2, and later Stage 3. It was never supposed to be a permanent gift. I was staying in the basement. Then, colder, darker, and with that slight mildew smell that clung to the old rugs no matter how many dehumidifiers they ran. I didn't complain. I was too tired to. Too tired from chemo. Too tired from pretending this was all temporary. Too tired from the smile I'd worn for months, just to keep from unraveling in front of my own mother. Dad had said, "It's just easier if we all adjust things a bit while Kara's pregnant. You're strong. You'll bounce back." Funny, that word, strong. It's what people call you when they're about to forget you exist. Kara cried the day they painted the room. Not from joy, from the paint smell triggering her nausea. She cried louder than I ever did when I found out my PET scan lit up again. Mom rushed to her with a glass of water and crackers. Dad pulled open the windows like he was saving a life. I stood at the threshold, just watching. Watching them cradle her mood swings like fragile glass. Watching the crib I used my donation fund to help purchase. Just until your disability payments come through. Mom had promised. Watching my name being slowly erased from every room of the house until all that was left was a worn mattress in the basement and a pill schedule taped to the mini fridge. They'd used my cancer to raise the GoFundMe total, but it was her registry. That got fulfilled first. They said I was selfish for crying, the one night I did, when I opened the email invoice and realized half of what had been donated in my name had gone to a nursery set. A designer one. The kind with matching wood grain and embroidered initials. I had no initials on anything in that house. Just a bottle of anti-nausea pills with a pharmacy label curled at the edges. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the silence. Not one of them asked if I needed a refill after my last chemo session. Not one of them noticed when I started skipping my antidepressants. Not because I was getting better, but because I couldn't afford both them and the heating bill that winter. "I thought you were getting help from the government now," Kara asked one afternoon while rubbing her belly and scrolling through baby name forums. "Help from the government. No one says that when you're healthy. They say it when you've become an inconvenience." And the most ironic part, she named the baby Hope. She didn't even flinch when I laughed. I laughed so hard I started coughing. It echoed off the basement walls and into the hollow spaces I used to fill upstairs. Dad came down and asked me to keep it down. Kara's resting. I stopped going upstairs unless I had to. The house creaked like it was guilty, especially at night. When everything settled, when no one was asking me to move my laundry, when Kara wasn't on speakerphone with her doula, or Mom wasn't, boiling water for herbal tea and muttering how exhausting it is to support 2 children at once. That part always made me smile. 2 children, as if I hadn't already become the parent to myself years ago. As if the child sleeping 2 floors above me, in a room I helped build, both literally and financially, hadn't taken my place. before she was even born. Some nights I could hear them, their laughter muffled through the vents. The TV tuned to whatever show they all watched after dinner. Shows I used to love, shows I introduced them to. Now it was their ritual, not mine. I used to knock. I used to ask if I could join, but each time the answer became a little more conditional. Maybe after Kara finishes her nap. Maybe when you're feeling more positive. Maybe when you don't look so tired. They didn't say I wasn't welcome. They never said it out loud. They just said it with the way they paused when I walked in, the way their laughter faded a little. The way Kara would adjust the throw pillow between her and me on the couch, like I might stain something. On the day of the baby shower, I stayed in bed. They didn't notice, or maybe they did. But no one came down. No one brought me a plate. No one asked me to come take photos, even though I was the one who always took the best ones. I heard the music, the clatter of cutlery, the way Kara squealed over gifts, over tiny socks and high-end strollers and diapers with organic bamboo linings. I heard Mom say, "She deserves this, after everything she's carried." I let that one sit in my chest a while, heavy, raw, bitter, after everything she's carried, and what about me? The months of vomiting into a bowl too tired to cry. The nights my bones ached so badly, I couldn't tell if I was freezing or just falling apart. The shame of waking up in the middle of the night to wet sheets because the meds shut down my bladder. Control. The panic of checking my account balance, knowing I'd have to wait until the 15th to afford pain meds. But sure, Kara had really carried a lot. Around midnight, after the last car pulled out of the driveway and the house fell silent again, I climbed the stairs. The dining room was still strewn with half-empty cups and glittery wrapping paper. The helium balloons cast lazy shadows against the ceiling. There was a cake, half-cut, still sitting out. "Welcome, Baby Hope," piped in Pink. The name twisted in my throat like a dare. I didn't take any. Instead, I picked up the envelope that had my name on it. It was buried under Kara's stack. A small card. No decoration. Just one line in my mother's handwriting. "We're proud of you too." Too. As if it were an afterthought. As if they knew. As if they knew what they'd done and couldn't quite face it. I didn't cry that night. I stood in the hallway and stared at that nursery door. Closed, decorated, warm. And then I went back downstairs, to the cold, to where I belonged, for now. The day I left, no one was home. That made it easier. Easier to carry my box of pills, the laptop, the old hoodie I always wore during chemo, and nothing else. Easier not to second-guess what I was doing when I packed up my toothbrush and my documents and left the note on the nightstand that read, "Don't worry, the basement's all yours now. No drama, no fight, just silence." I didn't take any clothes from the shared laundry closet. I didn't touch the pantry. I left the medicine drawer fully stocked, the drawer I restocked monthly, without thanks. Without question. I knew they'd notice eventually. Maybe when the bills came due and I wasn't there to split them. Maybe when the freezer wasn't refilled. Maybe when Kara needed something and there was no one left to shift blame onto. But not that day. That day was mine. I found a studio on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. The carpet was a little threadbare and the water pressure dipped when the neighbors flushed. But it was quiet, and the walls didn't echo with someone else's joy. Hung a single photo by the window. A picture of me at 17, hair down to my waist, paint on my jeans, laughing mid-bite into a bagel. It was the last photo of me before the diagnosis, before the slow erasure. It reminded me that once I was someone worth photographing. That first night, I didn't sleep much. The room felt unfamiliar. The kind of quiet that doesn't settle, just floats. But it was mine. I turned the heat on, just to feel it. Warm air whirred through the vent, and I stood over it with my arms crossed like a child. Let it soak into my bones. I realized then it had been over 8 months since I'd felt warm without shivering first. 2 days later, Kara called. I let it ring. She called again the next day, and again the day after. Then came a message from Mom. You could have said goodbye. We're all worried sick. Don't you think this is a little dramatic? Dramatic. There it was again. They didn't ask where I was, just that I had made them feel something. I didn't reply. Instead, I stared out the window as the sky turned gray, then violet, then finally the kind of nighttime blue that only comes when no one is watching you leave. I turned my phone off. But silence doesn't mean absence. It's a kind of presence that unnerves people who are used to your compliance. That week, I received 4 voicemails, one from Dad. Awkward, rambling, ending with, "Your sister's going through a lot." 2 from Mom, increasingly irritated, her tone sharpening like a knife. And 1 from Kara. I get it, okay? You're mad. But can we just talk? You can't cut family out over one misunderstanding. You're not the only one who's had it rough. I listened to it once, then I pressed delete. And then something strange happened. The quiet stopped being empty. I started to fill it. With music. With leftovers I didn't have to label. With books that didn't get borrowed and never returned. With mornings where I woke up and the only person I had to be kind to was me. I didn't realize how heavy their voices were until I no longer carried them around in my head. The first time I laughed, really laughed, it was over nothing. A burnt piece of toast. I'd dropped it, flipped the smoke alarm on, and slipped on the slick tile while trying to fan the air with an oven mitt. It was ridiculous, chaotic, and I sat on the floor with a crumb-covered towel and just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because no one was watching. No one was going to twist the moment into a lecture about how I never pay attention, or sigh about how much effort it takes to help me. There was no one to tell me I was fragile, so I decided I wasn't. I got a part-time job at the bookstore down the street. The owner, Mira, didn't ask about the scar on my collarbone or the discoloration around my fingernails from the meds. She just smiled, handed me a name tag, and said, "You look like someone who knows how to shelve poetry." I did, and for the first time in years, I read a line that felt like a hand on my shoulder. "You are not made of the things they forgot to give you." Naira Waheed. I read that line during my lunch break and didn't move for 10 minutes. I realized then that I hadn't cried since leaving, not out of repression, but because there was nothing left to grieve. The people I wanted to show up never had. The family I tried to love loved convenience more than they loved me. And I was done auditioning for warmth in cold places. Kara sent another message. This one included a picture of the baby, in a bonnet too big for her head. The caption read, "She'd love to meet her aunt someday. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a soft demand wrapped in sentiment." I didn't answer. But I stared at the baby for a long time, not with resentment, Not even bitterness. Just distance. Like watching someone else's movie through the window of a train. I wondered what it might feel like to be missed. To be remembered in a room. Never returned to. To exist in stories told by people who only realized your absence when their own lives quieted down. Mom called later that evening. I didn't pick up, but this time I listened. We just want to understand why you left like that. It's been hard for everyone, and Kara's been so emotional since the baby. We're trying, sweetie. Can you at least come for dinner? Just to talk? I paused, because part of me wanted to. Not for them, but for the part of me still waiting at the edge of their kitchen, plate in hand, hoping to be invited in. But that part was quieter now. Smaller, I whispered, "No," out loud, not to anyone, just to the room, just to practice. And it felt right. 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail. Real mail. Not a bill, not an ad. An envelope with my name written in cursive I knew too. Well, inside was a photo. Kara, Mom, Dad, and the baby, framed by the same yellow nursery walls. But there was space on the side of the couch, a blank spot where someone had clearly been cropped out. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, "We saved your seat." I held it for a while. Then I tucked it in the back of a drawer, behind my hospital bracelets, behind the discharge papers, behind the thank you notes that never had my name. Not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to prove. Winter came softly that year. The kind that doesn't knock. It just slips in through the cracks and sits with you, like an old friend who doesn't need to say anything. The radiator in my apartment hissed, faintly, but it worked. The lights buzzed, the faucet still dripped, and the walls sometimes groaned in the wind. But they were mine. I didn't go back for Christmas. Mom left a voicemail saying, "We hope you reconsider." Kara made her famous peppermint bark. As if that would undo everything, as if sugar could reach the parts they never bothered to notice. I made soup that night. Sat near the window, let the sky go dark without rushing to fill it with noise. There was a kind of holiness in the quiet. Like grief had finally finished unpacking and left me with just myself. Around midnight, I checked my bank account. There was enough. Enough for my next treatment if I needed it. Enough for rent. Enough for something small and beautiful. Maybe a trip. Maybe a tattoo of something that doesn't fade. Something no one can sell, or take, or forget. They'd used my cancer to build her nursery, and they'd called me selfish when I cried. But now, months later, no one was siphoning my strength. No one was praising my resilience only to wring it dry. No one was telling me who to be, just so they could sleep at night. I didn't send a message back. Not for Christmas. Not for New Year's. Not even when they sent a blurry photo of the baby standing for the first time. Instead, I slipped the framed photo they'd sent me, the one with the cropped-out spot, into a shoebox. I wrapped it in the hospital gown I'd kept from my last scan, the one with the inked number and safety pin tear near the shoulder. I placed both gently in the trash. Not out of anger, out of release. The next morning, I walked to the bookstore early. The frost had silvered the sidewalks, and my breath clouded up like steam. Mira handed me a coffee as I walked in and nodded at the poetry shelf. "You restock that section like it's a chapel," she said, half joking. "Maybe it is," I replied. That Afternoon. I slid a fresh card into the front display. It held one quiet line. Some fires don't burn. They warm. I didn't burn the bridge. I just walked away before it turned to ash with me still on it.